Good afternoon, Mr. Marco and friends. Today we are from Group 2 and we'll be discussing about industrialization in this pandemic era. Our group consists of myself, Enrico, Leonard, and Georges. Next. So we can see that this pandemic has dominantly affected a lot of industries in the world, especially towards the ASEAN region and especially Indonesia. And while we see that the Indonesian economy is still lacking in terms of infrastructure, physical and digital, and this is mostly due to the underinvestment by the Indonesian government or the Indonesian society. And while this pandemic is occurring in Indonesia, finding a budget will be harder because Indonesia's economy and finances are under pressure by the COVID-19 pandemic, and this will greatly affect a lot of industries, including including the following: manufacturing, agriculture, wholesale, construction, and so on. We see that most of these industries in Indonesia are affected negatively, but we see that there is one industry, one sector in Indonesia that is benefiting from this pandemic, and we can see in the next slide. Next. As I said before, this pandemic is affecting Indonesia's economy very badly, and we can see that by 2020, the growth rate of the GDP is only by 0.5% compared to 2018-2019. This can be seen very negatively because we see that the transition between 2018 and 2019 is 6.17 to 5.05%, and we can see that 2019 to 2020 there's only a rise of 0.5%. From this graph, we can see that the economy of Indonesia is greatly impacted, and these include transport, warehousing, manufacturing, and they're basically having a really hard time and trying to adapt to the situation. Next. So in this presentation, we'll be discussing more towards agricultural about Indonesia and Thailand. But in this slide, we can see that the Indonesian GDP is mostly dominated by three different sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. Agriculture is taking 12.72% of Indonesian GDP in 2019, whereas industries is taking 38.95% of the GDP in 2019. And the services is the most dominant one with 44.83% in GDP of Indonesia. Next.
And this is the GDP generated from Indonesian agriculture sectors in billions. So as seen in the PPT, that this is the figure of Indonesian agriculture sector that contribute towards the increase of 34% of GDP since the pandemic began in the March. And as it seems that in January 2020 is about 71,800, and it rise in July 2020 about 996,900. And then next, and this one is the annual growth for Indonesian agriculture sectors. This is by the percentage. The annual growth for the agriculture sector raised from 0.2 in the first quarter and rising up to second quarter about 2.19% due to the current pandemic situation. Next. And this is the annual growth for Indonesian agriculture sector. And while the growth is particularly attributed for the resilient farmers to the crisis, it was also aided by the delay in the rice harvest following the years, as it seems that in the blue one is March is about 6.27% in 6.27 million per tons, and here it rise up in the red one, which is April in 9.86%. Next.
As mentioned from the previous slide, we see that the increasing of rice production in Indonesia and their late harvest in April is the reason why the agriculture sector in Indonesia is not particularly falling, unlike other sectors. And in this slide, we can see that most of the farmers' welfare in Indonesia due to the pandemic, because they have a lot of rice production in store, rice production in supply, and that is the reason why the agricultural sector in Indonesia particularly doesn't fall. We can see that from the graph, um, the farmers' term of trade rebounded to 100.65 in August compared to 99.6 in June. The figures mean a figure of 100 means that the farmer's expenses matches their income, whereas a figure over 100 means that their income exceeds their expenses, which means they are profiting, whereas a figure below 100 means their expenses are more than their income. Next.
All right, now moving on. So farmers go digital in Indonesia, which means that farmers will sell their product online. They use big data so that they can create decision making and see available option, and also see the market trends, the Indonesian market. Now we move to the Thailand. Pandemic effects towards rice industry in Thailand. So the agriculture in Thailand is surprisingly experienced a massive decline. They decreased drastically over the past few months since the pandemic. They are having some troubles in the difficulty to export to the due to the Thai currency. Furthermore, Karen Lautomatas, the Thai Rice Exporter Association, said that Thailand is also facing shortage of labor. It is because youngsters are no longer interested in the farm field. Now this is the annual growth of Thailand's agricultural sector. GDP from agriculture in Thailand decreased to 154,629 in the second quarter of 2020 from 166,323 the first quarter of 2020. Now the annual growth of Thailand's agriculture sector in percent. On July 2020, Thailand rate dropped by 9.7% compared to the January 2020, which was only 0.2%. So the statistics shows that Thailand agriculture has become worse the past few months in 2020. Comparing to 2019, there is still a positive increase in the GDP by 1%, and in the end of 2019, it decreased to 0.4%.
As we could see from Thailand's data of monthly export in food and manufactured goods, starting from Jan 2019 until the end of December 2019, there is a constant fluctuation of the amount of the profit made from food and manufactured goods. But starting on Jan 2020 until April 2020, there's a increase in food production of the profit for food, while there's a decrease for manufactured goods. The explanation towards this is that since WHO has announced the COVID-19 as a serious pandemic situation, every single country has closed down or established a lockdown for their manufactured companies and to ensure that there's a decrease or decline in the spread of coronavirus. Well, the reason why agricultural increase is that there isn't much farmer tending to the fields, so it is fine for them to operate. And furthermore, government officials and country themselves require food on their daily basis. So shutting them down or closing them down temporarily would be a bad idea for the country and also for the economy. Next. Now, according to Thailand's rice industry, Thailand has been one of the world's biggest supplier of agricultural goods. It has around 17.5% of its rice, following the chicken, sugar, canned tuna, tapioca flour, shrimp, uh, some freshwater fishes, and many more. This make up the one of the largest share in ASEAN region, and this are all affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as most of this reduces the demand for these goods, as people are incapable of visiting stores to purchase them, or restaurants are unable to purchase these goods due to the amount of supplies not decreasing, as fewer and fewer people visit restaurants or dine in. Next. We have some recommendation for Indonesia to help them re-establish their economy. Some of them example is reduce taxes for F&B, travels, auto, and small industries. Now, the reason why reduce taxes for this is because uh, these are the main industries that is mostly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, because this relies so much on consumers visiting them or using their services in a physical manner, such as going to them, visiting them, like or taking your car to the service shop to repair it. Okay. We also suggest in providing subsidies for industry which Indonesia solely depend on very much for their economy, such as banks, oil and gas industries, agriculture, fishery, and many more. The reason is because uh, they they are not so able to make much profit due to the COVID-19, and government would constantly tax them. If this carry on, they would lose so much profit to the point when COVID-19 is over. They will have difficulty in helping Indonesia's economy in improving again. So another solution is to export agricultural goods to China. Now, the reason why China, because China, we believe they are the first country to experience the COVID-19 situation, as well as the first country to recover from the COVID-19 situation. And furthermore, China currently are having a trade war between USA, meaning that they will depend lesser and lesser on US goods, as well as any country or any goods from countries that are allied with US. And furthermore, China is a number one importer of foreign goods. This foreign goods can be anything of like food, resources for constructions, and many, many more. We suggest that Indonesia could help in exporting and supplying materials used by China to produce the COVID-19 vaccine. Such an example is the horseshoe crab. Now, there's a link in below. Uh, we believe that the reason why is because as China as China able to find the vaccine, they'll produce more and more and more abundant amount. But the thing from what we know, they're lacking in resources. And Indonesia could be one of China's provider in those resources. As Indonesia, we believe they could provide cheaper resources and better quality compared to other nations such as US and Japan or Korea. Also, we suggest that Indonesia would plan and initiate methods to improve foreign investment, especially from China, because we could see that many ASEAN countries or many countries that is invested by China is able to prosper. Such an example is Kenya. Next. Now, our recommendation for Thailand is that Thailand should rely on automation or robotics for their agriculture, as due to the decrease in youngsters wishing to be in the farm fields, or let's say decrease in farmers in the farm fields. And the reason why is because this could help cover up the lack of farmers, as robotics or automation can help establish a lot of works done by farmers. Example, one robot could finish tasks of 10 farmers' tasks. We also suggest Thailand to increase exportation of agricultural goods to China, such as coconut milk, sweet fruits, high quality veggies, and because these are one of the highest demand among Chinese citizens. And so as far as we know, Thailand are able to produce one of the best agricultural goods among all ASEAN countries. Thailand should also improve their quality of technology to a much more modern era, where we could say robotics and computers control the growth and quality of the plants, as we see from from the documentary that most of Thailand's agriculture are still dependent on farmers and laborers instead of robotics or any or any high technology like in Japan. Also, Thailand should focus on subsidizing industry in Thailand, which has a great impact towards Thailand economy and GDP. This example is similar to that of Indonesia, because if Thailand does not do that, more likely chance after the COVID-19 situation, it would be very difficult for Thailand to recover from the damages. Now, we also suggest Thailand should have a closer relationship with China instead of USA, because as it was mentioned before, for the rice industry, Thailand, they're one of their number one customer is USA. And seeing at this situation right now, we would suggest Thailand could focus more on China, as USA, their country is a bit far, very, very far from Thailand. And while China is closer, and China would demand much more, and they would pay much more for high quality of goods. And next, next. These are the references. And I would like to, on behalf of Brian Trisno, Georges Edward, and Rico Kuntulwibowo, we would like to thank you very much, Mr. Marco, for listening to our interview and looking to our presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Marco.
Thank you, Sir Marco.
Thank you.
Thank you.